Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Second and Saints off-season mode, Ross. That's where we're
Woohoo!
kind of at. So, man, it's been a minute. This lot has kind of happened, obviously, since we last did a recording. But man, how's things going? You ready for
Oh,
this
great.
Arctic cold? Because I know you love the cold weather.
I am not. I am not. I'm considering fleeing. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not ready for it.
Yeah,
Nope.
you might want to book a flight to Miami real quick because that's probably the only
Yeah.
way you can get safe. You can't go up north, man. It's going to be worse than what it is. So,
Yeah,
but
I want
yeah,
nothing to do
that's
with it.
coming. That's coming. So that's going to be a thing. But hey, we'll just roll with the punches like we always do, right?
Facts.
So, all right. So let's catch up a little bit here. Let's start with kind of digesting some of the stuff that Mickey Loomis had said on Monday, right? Like he had the press conference, talked for about 45 minutes. That's about right on pace with what he normally does. I guess initial impressions, first of all, from what he said and what kind of stuck out to you.
Well, first of all, shout out to Saints PR for letting us have like 17 last questions. That was really like we really pushed that, man. We really did. And so I just want to say shout out to them for not cutting us off because we just kept going. But yeah, no, I think there were some like key takeaways, right? I mean, obviously the quarterback decision is a big one this offseason that everybody's kind of interested in, with the Saints leaning towards allowing that decision to be made by the next head coach, which is exactly the way that it should be. They feel like they're making progress in terms of their salary cap situation. They are still well over the salary cap going into this year, but I think it's fair to say that they're like at 50% of what they used to be, $110+ million over the salary cap in previous years, things like that. So I think that we've seen some progress there. Mickey learned that it was the 9th overall selection they have, not the 10th overall selection. So that was a pleasant surprise for him, I'm sure, and things like that. I'm making jokes, but it was a little weird to like not know.
Yeah,
But it just goes to
that
show
was
you
weird.
like, yeah, but it goes to show you how like how much a coaching search weighs and like all these other things. And then we got an idea of what it is that the Saints are looking for in their next head coach. And unsurprisingly, it's alignment, right? Like they want
Mhm.
owner, general manager, they want that synergy with the head coach and everything. And I think they're going to be able to find that. I think that's a common thing that new head coaches or even head coaches that have left somewhere else are typically looking for in their new landing spot. So if I had to pick kind of like three big takeaways, I would say that those are kind of the big three in terms of head coach, salary cap, and quarterback.
Yeah, I think like obviously piggybacking off that because what we're talking about is coaches tonight, but going with the best candidate that it doesn't have to be an offensive minded
Yeah,
guy or a
right.
defensive minded guy. And for all intents and purposes, it looks like Clint Kubiak's out, right? Like he had a
Yeah, right.
second
Good
interview
call.
with the Seahawks, in person interview this time. It didn't work out with the Browns. They promoted within, and so again, Mickey said that everybody's still on payroll, everybody's still employed until a new coach comes in and
Hmm.
makes that determination, which is another thing is that particular coach is going to have say over his staff, right? Which I thought was really important because some people had been under the impression that Mickey was going to override him and say, nope, you got to
Yep.
keep Clint Kubiak, you got to do this. So that was good to hear for sure.
Yeah.
And again, the salary cap, it always comes up, right? And I
Yep.
don't know that the players under contract was as big a flex as it probably came off. You know what I mean? Like there's still a lot of things that are in there, like players with voiding contracts, and that's part of reserve future.
Restructures and
Yeah, it's a lot of things,
prorates.
but like I get it. I get the confidence that Mickey Loomis has. I get a lot of the, where he feels. He said he's a glass half full guy, right? Like
Hmm.
always very positive and such. And I guess the only, I don't want to say concern, but the biggest thing that really stood out to me is you have six voices in the room, which they say it's experience, but six voices in the room. Him, Kai Harley, Michael Parrington, you got Jeff Ireland, Dave Ziegler, and Randy Mueller. Is that too much just to make like one collective voice, or can they make that work?
It's a good question. I think you can make that work, right? Like you typically want a hiring committee when it comes to these types of situations. And I think as long as you have either a unified approach or enough differing opinions, I'm curious like what the percentage of each voice is, right? If you're trying to equally represent all six voices, then yes, it's too much. But if Mickey is 50% of the voice, and, Kai is another 25% of the voice, and, some other people are 20% of the voice, and Parrington's 20% of the voice. And then, these other guys, Mueller and Ziegler, these guys that are kind of in this, what do you call it? Advisory.
Brain trust,
Yeah,
something.
like the advisory roles. They're
Yeah.
not the, core guys or whatever. Maybe they get a little bit less of a voice, but still get to offer a dissenting opinion or something like that. I think as long as some people are there to specifically offer a dissenting opinion and a new perspective, then I think you can work on it. But it should not be an equal amount of decision making or an equal amount of input across. I think that's how you make a 6-person kind of search committee, if you will, work out. I think that's okay. I think you can make that happen. And we've seen the Saints kind of, we had a lot of people around us, John, tell us that this was going to be an expansive coaching search. I think a diverse coaching search. I wouldn't call it an expansive, an expansive coaching search with effectively 8 names only tied to the team, 9 depending upon how you classify Vrabel in that conversation before he was hired.
Right.
Not a wide swath of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 candidates. But I think you see other teams like the Bears and the Jets just doing too damn much. 19 candidates, like chill out. Like,
Yeah.
my thing is, like, I hate going to a restaurant and like one page is, West African food, and then you flip it over and then all of a sudden it's Senegalese, and then the next thing is like Chinese, and you flip it over and then it's Mexican food, and then it's American classics. Like, you're doing too dang much. Like, calm down. Like, I don't need that many options. Just give me 10 really good ones. But is 8 enough? That's what I'm not sure. So you got 6 people making a decision. You got 8 people that you're considering. I don't know if that's enough, if you need more, where that goes from there.
Yeah, and you talk about best laid plans, right? Like, obviously, Aaron Glenn's the betting favorite. I think he's probably the front runner. There was a report from the New York Post saying that he told people close to him that, the Jets are his preferred destination, which again, that got refuted. That's what's weird about this coaching search is there's candidates that have come out, all these things out of the woodwork. Like, even at one point, Matt Nagy was on the radar, right? Like, and it's not saying he isn't, but like, there's been so much like spewage of information have been put out there that you got to disseminate what's actually true and what's actually happening. And that's one of the reasons why on past pods we said there's a difference between showing interest in and actually interviewing. And so again, I think that's the big takeaway is that, there are other names out there, another guys that they're not necessarily paired to, and they said they can go with somebody that they're not familiar with, right? Because they'll do their homework. But I just thought that is something is that, there's just so many different candidates, and Glenn's probably the guy as of right now, but he has to say yes. He's got a big opportunity going up against the Commanders. I think he's already done enough, right? Like, but I loved his press conference that he had this week and said, I'm just going to be myself. And whenever I get a coaching opportunity, either you like it or you don't. That's the attitude you need to have. You never hear that stuff from DA.
No,
never.
no,
That's
no.
what's
That's
different
why
about him.
Yeah, that's why I hate Aaron Glenn's, Dennis Allen 2.0. The two could not be more different. That's just one of those like analysis things that sounds smarter than it actually is kind of situations. Like, he is not the same as Dennis Allen. But listen, on the New York Jets thing, like, I've heard since the season ended that the Jets were his preferred destination. I know that's a report that got refuted, but I don't think that that's not true. I just think too that, like, you don't probably want that out publicly, right? As somebody that is trying to keep all of his options open. I think that's something that maybe he said in confidence that he didn't necessarily want out. So you start to try to walk back those things where you get those opportunities. But I also don't think that, like, having a preference of landing with the New York Jets doesn't mean that you don't want to land with the New Orleans Saints. It's just that, like, the Jets are the team that drafted them. The Jets are a historied franchise. You get to be the guy that turns around the New York Jets. Like, that's a huge badge of honor. And I think people erase the ego of those opportunities or the pride that comes with those opportunities sometimes when it comes to these coaching searches, because people want the coach to be favorable to their favorite team and all those other things. So I don't think that wanting the Jets job is a bad thing when it comes to Aaron Glenn. And I've heard several people tell me that are that know Glenn, that have been around Glenn and all these other things, that is the case, that he does want the Jets job. But I don't think that means that he doesn't want the Saints job.
Right.
It's just like, that's a part of the conversation. Of course he wants the Jets job. Otherwise you don't interview for the Jets job, right? And of course you want the Saints job, or you don't interview for the Saints job. Look at Ben Johnson. He was very selective about the places that he interviewed. I think you're seeing Aaron Glenn do the same thing. Remember, he openly dismissed and declined the New England Patriots interview.
Smartly.
He said, no, I'm not going to be your Rooney Rule interview. I'm not doing that and everything. And so they went off and they did their other Rooney Rule interviews that for the most overtly awful coaching search done by the New England Patriots. But good on Aaron Glenn. And I think he was very open about not wanting to be a part of that, right? And that news came out. And so you're not hearing anybody say he doesn't want the New Orleans Saints job. You're just hearing that, yeah, he does want the Jets job. And that's okay. That's a fine thing to want.
Yeah, and it could be a power play too. I mean, they're like, all right, put some pressure on New Orleans. You better come to the table with a good offer, right? Because I think that's another thing is don't lowball them. You know, don't try to make me somebody low paid or anything like that. New York's going to throw money at me, right? Like, and I'm not saying that's what Glenn's motivation is, but
it's a reason, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, you gotta with him. Here's the thing: you got to go beyond the surface level with him. I'm going to use this phrase because when you look at how he talks, how he acts, what he says, you got to remember one of the again going back to the press conference he had just this week is the fact that he said what was so different about the team in Detroit is that all the coaches, no matter with them going 3-13-1, that they believed that what they were doing was the right thing. And they weren't too far off. They were sticking to the process, but everybody was united, like drumline, one band, one sound, whatever the case may be. And so that was the difference is that culture was established that saying he's one guy that's united. Everybody's on the same page. And when you have that, not like a Todd Grantham situation. Whoo, man, that was a crazy thing with Cam Jordan.
What a review.
But Cam's also going to be real. But I just think that's a tip of the hat to Aaron Glenn. He is not Dennis Allen, y'all. I get it. He hasn't coached a game in this league, which that honestly, he's not Dennis Allen in that regard too.
Right.
But there's just so many things. And I think it's just a lazy narrative, a lazy take to just be like, it's a Dennis Allen retread. It's not, y'all. And I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to go 10-7 his first year. He's going to get the Saints into the playoffs and win the Super Bowl. Nobody's saying that, but I would tell you it's a considerable upgrade from what they had for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think you get a leader. I'm not a fan of, I talked about this on Locked on Saints the other day. I'm not a fan of the coach that's not a rah-rah guy. Like, it's why I like Rizzi. Like, it's one of the reasons why I love them turning from Dennis Allen going to Darren Rizzi is that you got the rah-rah guy. To me, the rah-rah guy is the leader. I hate the thing about like, oh, I'm a leader, but I'm not a rah-rah guy. Then you're not a leader. I'm sorry. You're not.
Yes.
Like, if you're a rah-rah guy, then you're a leader. If you're somebody that's going to motivate everybody, then you're a leader. If you're somebody that's going to inspire everybody, then you're a leader. If you're a lead by example guy, then you're somebody that's following the lead of that leader and setting a good example for the other followers, but you're a follower. You're not a leader. And so for me, like, I want that guy that's going to go out there and have a voice if I'm an NFL team and say, this is my team. I am your leader. I am your motivator. And if he can go out there and do that, then I think that that's a win. Anytime you can get a head coach that's like that. Dennis Allen was not that guy. Dennis Allen had a little bit of a my way or the highway kind of approach to him. Aaron Glenn does not have that. He wants his players to make him right. That's something that I love as a coach as well. These are the things that I really like about Aaron Glenn. And one of the reasons why I completely agree with you, he is not at all a Dennis Allen guy. He might have a defensive system that's similar to Dennis Allen's, but remember, that was the one thing that made Dennis Allen overly valuable was his defense. So if there's anything that you do want and anything that you're okay with replicating, it's a little bit of his defense, but obviously, modernization, things like that have to come with that, more speed on the edge, all these other things. There's things to improve for sure, but to say that he's just a retread of Dennis Allen is widely short-sighted because my goodness, is he a leader. And I think that's what this team is desperately in need of.
Yeah. Organization decision. Remember that one too. So
yeah, right.
But I mean, it's awesome how different players have defended, like how, again, like Ben Johnson or Dan Campbell or the players, even with, guys like Joe Brady. I mean, I don't recall hearing a lot of that about Dennis Allen when it was up for the job. You know what I'm saying? So I just think so many different elements and nuances that go into this. And look, it's still got a ways. Like, I don't
Oh
expect the
yeah.
Saints to have a coach in place until way after the Super Bowl, right? Like,
Yeah.
if they get somebody in before the combine, that's probably the best case scenario, right?
Hmm.
But this is still a process. It depends on what teams go out this weekend and who keeps going on and then how far they go. I mean, but I think it's probably safe to say that Aaron Glenn's probably their top guy, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's from everything we know, we've heard, and what we've seen that's where it looks like they're going. But there are a whole bunch of other guys on these lists, and what we're going to get into tonight is actually a little bit interesting. If you followed us for a while, and don't forget to hit like, subscribe, we did this back what was in the draft when we did positions of needs for the
Yeah.
Saints.
Right. Right. Right.
And so what we're doing is we are going to, let me get it pulled up. We're going to do a tier ranking of the coaches, and we're going to give
Cheerless
some
season,
input.
baby.
Tier list season. Let us go
I love
and
it.
ignore the fun ads. But we've got a whole bunch of candidates down there, as you can see. We've got Cliff
Yeah. Added
Kingsbury,
some of our
Mike
own.
McCarthy, Mike Kafka, Pete Carroll, John Gruden, Vance Joseph. We've got Jesse Minter, Brian Flores, Aaron Glenn, Anthony Weaver, Joe Brady, Kellen Moore, Darren Rizzi, and the Brady Bunch too. So, I mean, we just got a whole bunch of people there. And so I guess what we could say is I will just probably start off by saying I don't know that I'm going to put anybody in a C tier or a D tier. Definitely not a D tier. C tier, my only guy I might think about might be Mike Kafka, but
I
that's
gotta
not.
agree.
I just think that would be the only one. And look, I think he gets by with what he did in Kansas City. But if we're going off a recency bias, Giants ain't it, man. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, and he
I
also
know.
got he's the offensive coordinator and he was the play caller for the last 2 years, but then he got offensive play calling duties taken away from him here in 2024. Not that
Mhm,
that helped make the team any better by any stretch of the imagination, but
yep.
it is an interesting thing. The thing that is interesting about Kafka is his connection to Andy Reid. Andy
Yeah.
Reid is all about this guy. And so if there's somebody that you trust to be an evaluator of talent, then probably Andy Reid's the guy. But man, I don't see that one as an inspiring hire by any stretch of the imagination for New Orleans.
Yeah. Well, and look, you know what? I was going to go into it, and I think we probably can agree. And look, Mike Kafka used to play in the league and all this other stuff.
Hmm.
I think he had a good run at Kansas City, but again, how much was this Andy Reid? Andy Reid, excuse
Right.
me. How much of that was Andy Reid? How much of it was Mike Kafka? And you got Patrick
Right.
Mahomes there. You got Travis Kelsey. Like, you're built to succeed there, right? And so,
Hmm.
look, I'm gonna just go ahead and put him there just from that aspect. Mike Kafka I didn't intend to lead off with him. I just said
That's all
I
right.
didn't think anybody could go in the D tier, C tier. I only had one guy that I might put there. I might have another one just based off of some things, but where do you want to go on the Wheel of Fortune Jeopardy board? I guess we talked about Aaron Glenn
Yeah.
and all the things. So I guess I'd say maybe we can go there.
Yeah, I think Aaron Glenn's your S tier, right? I mean, he's probably the best fit for the organization. He's the guy that makes the most sense for the team, and he's probably the one that outside of a couple of these guys, the one that is the leader of men type, right? Some of these like younger offensive guys might be that guy, we just don't know. But I think Glenn, we know the answer to that question already, and so that kind of puts him ahead of the curve a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, look, the thing is, he's going to do a lot for whatever organization he goes into, and again, the thing is, it's not going to necessarily be overnight. And
Right.
I know what people are thinking, and I think the Saints, they've got to be real with themselves. Although I don't think they're going to be real with themselves, they're going to try to push the chips in. They're going to try to win a division championship. I don't know if that's with Derek Carr. I don't know if that's with Spencer Rattler. I don't know if it's with a 1 year stopgap quarterback like a Jimmy Garoppolo or a Josh Dobbs or something like that. But I get the sense that they're going to at least make the attempt. And so that's a dangerous spot to think and to be in. But look, I'm with you. I think Glenn, out of all the candidates that are there, Vrabel would have been in the S tier too. Like, I
Agreed.
think that,
Completely
of
agree.
course, we said when New England opened up that it was going there. Like, I didn't care what happened. Everybody's like, well, hold the phone. I was like, no, he's going
No.
to New England. And so, like, there is no what do you mean, all this other stuff. Like, he was always gonna, practically go to New England. So
Yeah.
again, he would have been the other S tier. Anybody else that you might make a pitch for S tier on here?
I don't think so. I tend to treat these as like a little bit of a bell curve, right? And so there
Yeah.
should be fewer S tier, fewer C tier, more in the A and B if we're not going to do any D tier guys and everything. So I think maybe we might stumble upon some conversation and can talk ourselves from an A tier to an S tier, but I don't think there's anybody that immediately jumps out as an S tier guy.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that
I
there's not
agree.
more good options,
Sure.
though. I want
Yeah.
to be
No,
clear about that, but
I'm with you. I'm with you. And the thing is, I think that Glenn's going to be a most sought after guy after Mike Vrabel, right? And again,
yeah,
I'll go from here because the Mike McCarthy rumors, nothing set in stone with the Saints yet. There's no urgency from
kind of
what we've heard
surprising.
on it, obviously, which
Yeah.
is surprising. Chicago rolling out the red carpet for Mike McCarthy. Look, if I think Chicago's probably a good destination for him,
I think so too.
but ties for New Orleans and stuff. Mike McCarthy's won a Super Bowl. He's runs a modern, or not a modern, but he runs a variation of a West Coast offense, play
Mhm.
action, pre-snap motion that's very familiar and similar to New Orleans. I think that's why Mike McCarthy would make a lot of sense in New Orleans. He's not somebody who is the total rah-rah guy or anything. Like, he's pretty solid. Like, I think he's probably one of the guys I'd put in the A tier for sure off the bat.
Yeah, I got to agree there too. He's not the most inspiring hire for a fan base, probably, but he's the one option that's been there, done that. And players love playing for Mike McCarthy. I don't know
Yep.
if you saw I don't know if you saw the write up on the. Did you see the watermelon sledgehammer thing?
I remember
Oh,
hearing about it. I don't know if yeah, like the
yeah.
old Gallagher.
Yep. He did his whole thing to where like during a team meeting, he felt like it was like he felt like he failed the team, and he was basically saying that, like the goal was to like smash and to stop the run game and all those other things. We didn't do that well enough, and the idea was like hammer and win in the run game, and we didn't do that. And so he pulled out a sledgehammer. He had watermelons rolled in at the team meeting, and he just sat there and started smashing watermelons, and that it was going into a Vikings game or maybe coming out of a Vikings game. And so they put a picture of Dalvin Cook on the
Mhm.
last watermelon. And then DeMarcus Lawrence got up and said, no, coach, I got this one. And then he smashed the Dalvin Cook one and everything. And so it's just like, it's stupid. It's like one of those like little performative things that you hear coaches do and stuff like that. Like Darren Rizzi did the construction worker thing where we're just adding props every week and stuff like that. But it's like, it's Parcellsian. It's this thing that like works and everything and that players love. And so that's one of the things that I do appreciate about Mike McCarthy as well. He might not be the most inspiring hire from a fan base standpoint, but man, front offices love him and players love
Yep.
playing for him. Coaches love coaching with him. I think that means something.
Yeah, and I just look at what Micah Parsons was talking about, and Micah Parsons
Yeah,
probably
right.
was a thing or two, like to make that impact and to say that about your coach. And again, I think it's more people than that would do it. But again, look what he kind of did with some of the things with Cooper Rush with no Dak. I mean, all things considered, I think he was a difference maker and being able to help turn Dallas instead of going downward trajectory, at least finish, I would say, quote unquote, respectable. But he's not going to be back with Dallas next year. I think
Right.
with Mike McCarthy, it's one of those things where, if I was at a restaurant chain or doing something, like, he's probably like the solid restaurant chain. You know what I mean? He might not be
Yeah.
like the top tier restaurant chain or something that you're looking for, but he's the one that's pretty good, got some good options, has some good stuff going on. Maybe they don't have everything that's solid that you want, but you can be satisfied and be happy after you get a meal from him. I think that's where Mike McCarthy is for sure.
Yeah,
But
I agree. I like that a lot. And I think the other thing, the big concern with him is, can you get past all of the playoff shortcomings and everything? But then for a team that hasn't been to the playoffs in 4 years, beggars can't be choosers, right?
right.
So like, would you rather not get to the playoffs or lose in the playoffs? That's where
Yep.
I think that kind of look at things like that. But obviously, like, he's been somebody that has won a Super Bowl before. Statistically speaking, around the NFL, if you're a Super Bowl winning head coach, you're more likely to be a Super Bowl winning head coach again before somebody else wins a head coaching thing. That's how numbers work, though. It's more correlation than causation. But I think those things do matter. but I'm not going to put him at S tier either, because I think you still have some of those big question marks about hasn't been able to put together a single top 5 run game his entire coaching career, has only had 2 or 3 top 10 rushing offenses in his entire career and his entire coaching career, and then the playoff woes. I think those are things you got to be able to kind of what's the word? Not justify, but you got to be able to kind of figure those things out if you're gonna be a S tier guy.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think so. And look, Aaron Glenn's never coached a game. We understand that, but I just think what he's able to offer and the program he's coming with, I think he's coming in with a vengeance, right? Like I think he's
Yeah.
coming in with a lot of things. And so, again, I like putting McCarthy in that A tier for sure.
Yeah. One
But
last thing. I think
yeah,
too, going from Jerry Jones to Gail Benson and Mickey Loomis, I'd be curious to see what the weight off of his shoulders allowed him to do. That's all.
oh gosh, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a thing. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's the right thing but it is a thing. You
Yeah.
know
It's
what I
just
mean?
a thing.
So
That's all.
yeah,
Just a
it's
thing.
just a thing. All right. So now what we're looking at, let's go with another one because we're kind of talking about some of the hotter names, I guess, right now with the Saints. Let's go with the Joe Brady,
Yeah.
Bill's offensive coordinator. When he was here with the Saints, I wouldn't really call it much of him doing much here.
Uh,
His bread and butter was LSU with Joe Burrow
mhm.
and them, but what he's done in Buffalo is obviously been great because of Josh Allen. And obviously, we don't forget about Carolina when he was supposed to be like the savior to their offense, and
Right.
he got fired, right? And so, what
Mhm.
do you make of Joe Brady and what he brings to the table?
So I'm high on Joe Brady. I will say
Okay.
that. And I think I'm higher on Joe Brady than maybe most analysts are. So we might have to my vote, your vote, and find an average or something like that.
Okay.
So I think he's an A tier guy as an option. Um, I think the growth potential from Carolina to Buffalo is massive. I think that, yes, he has done good things with good quarterbacks like Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, but surprise, surprise, good coordinators do good things with good players. Who'd have thunk? And
Yeah. Imagine that.
ideally, you're not in a bad quarterback situation for the entirety of his tenure here in New Orleans, right? Like ideally, he's getting another good quarterback in your building at some point. So I think the idea of like hedging him because he does well with good quarterbacks is kind of like admitting, well, as an organization, you'd be admitting, well, we never intend to have a good quarterback, which doesn't make any sense to me. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
why hedge him for that? So I like that. I also like the fact that in Buffalo, he's done all these great things with Josh Allen, despite the fact that Buffalo went ahead and played Moneyball this year at the wide receiver position. There's no big name at wide receiver. Amari Cooper's not a big name anymore. They went out and they got him. He helped a little bit, but he has not been the big name like a
Hmm.
Stephon Diggs was.
Right.
Um, and I think that you watched this run game just get better and better and better with James Cook as well, which is something else
Yep.
that I credit to Joe Brady. Don't forget that Ken Dorsey had this same quarterback, this same running back, and Stephon Diggs last year and got fired. And Joe Brady came in as an interim and made everything better on
Yeah.
offense, right? And so for me, all of those things, plus the growth potential in terms of what you've seen from him at Carolina to him uh, at Buffalo or in Buffalo, I think that to me, those things make him an A tier candidate. My big question mark is he the leader? Is he the rah rah guy? Is he the motivator? That's just something I don't have a gauge for right now, but you'd have to figure that out in the interviews if you're the Saints.
Yeah. That's the only reason why I would shift him a little lower is because I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what Joe Brady's personality is. And look, I see what Josh Allen is saying. Like, no, nobody needs to be talking about this guy. You know, he
Right.
needs to stay
Right.
here, all this other stuff, which is good to see. Obviously, you
Yeah.
want to defend that and such, but that's my only question is he's a younger head coach. He would be a younger head coach, right? And so that could be great. That could not go so great, right?
Right.
And I think that's the thing is, you know, I'm not saying he is, but is he a yes man? Is he somebody that comes in and can run an offense but can't lead a team? You know what I mean? You got to be
Mm-hmm.
able to do both, right? Because assumingly he's going to come in here and run the offense, right? But being a leader of an entire team, that's obviously a completely different thing. You can't do the DA approach, like what was in that
Right.
SI article, is kind of just like everybody's left to do their own thing. Like, you got to have a pulse on it. And
Yep.
again, I circle back to Aaron Glenn. He's like, I'm a coach, so I'm going to know what the offense does. Is just as much as the defense does. And so I can agree that Brady can go into an A tier, but I just have reservations about his ability to lead and what that looks like, just because I don't know if we're just basing it off of the Buffalo tenure. But if you look back at the other things, I don't know. It could be hit or miss, but I would
Yeah.
give him the benefit of the doubt, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm with you on that. I'm totally okay with putting him at like the top of the B tier, or after as we fill out the A tier, maybe we put him towards the back end of the A tier or something like that. I think we got to find like what's happy medium for both of us. But like he's a good option, and to me, he should be one of the team's top options, one of their
Yep,
top
for
4.
sure. Yep. I don't disagree there. I think that's the thing, is that, you're looking at 3 of these guys that are in these top tiers right now. I think if the Saints were to hire any one of these 3, people should be happy about that, right?
Yeah,
Like, I think
yeah,
that's the biggest thing. Let's also go to Darren Rizzi, right? Like, I mean, had his interview on Friday. He did all his evaluations with the team and all this other stuff. Again, we don't know if Rizzi's going to get the job or not. And look,
hmm,
they may go in a different direction. And then Denver just fired their special teams coordinator, so Sean Payton might
natural fit.
easily snatch him up because Denver
Yeah,
Saints, you know what I mean? But look,
right.
we always knew that Rizzi wasn't dealt a good hand, right? But he
Yeah,
made the most of it in some aspects. I loved how he came out of the gate. I love what they did to make changes. I think he knows how to run a program, a successful program, but the execution in the last several games, that's what's alarming to me, is that you went from this team that had all this energy, and we said it on our shows, is like, where did that team that showed up against
right.
Atlanta go? Are you just not good? And then look, I think a lot of that has to do with the bad defense. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure.
can't
You
get
had no
can't get Colin
defect.
Saunders on me again. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Yeah, I mean, like you didn't have the architect of your defense. You had other people trying to call someone else's defense and everything like that. Like it didn't work. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And so it's interesting to try to figure out like, man, what do you attribute to Rizzi? What do you not attribute to Rizzi and stuff like that? I here's what I do like about Rizzi. I like that he's a CEO head coach. I think CEO
mm,
head coaches are better. I just do. I think that they're better fits in the NFL today. I know it's tough to replace the offensive coordinator year in and year out, but there's so many good offensive coordinators. I'm not super worried about that as much. And the offensive coordinator hire is slowing down across the NFL as the CEO head coaches are becoming more and more and more successful. Look at the playoff field, right?
mm-hmm,
Dan Quinn, Sean McDermott, the Harbaugh, like all this. Both Harbaughs were in the playoffs. They're both CEO head coaches. I like those guys. And by the way, when we're saying CEO head coaches, what we mean is the head coach that's not also a play caller on one side of the football. And
mm-hmm,
so I like the idea of the guy that can be in every meeting. I like the idea of the guy that's not married to one side of the football and isn't the coach of the other side of the football, or feels like he's not the coach on the other side of the football and stuff like that. I like that. So that's my favorite part about Rizzi. I don't know if that makes him A tier, but it makes him my other in the top 4 for this team, in terms of like the options that are either being interviewed or are expected to interview or have interest, that like is at the kind of top half of that group.
yeah. And look, I think the biggest things for Rizzi is the passion he brings to the job, the respect
Yeah.
he brings to the job, and then the accountability part, right? Like, I just think that that's the big things for him. And look, he said it in his end of the year press conference. Again, he turned in another top 10 special teams unit, right? Like, he can coach, he can definitely do those things. But I think really from him, he's put in a bad situation, right? And
Hmm.
again, you don't want to go look and blame the injuries like some people have been doing and all this other stuff. But, I wonder what it would have been like if Darren Rizzi was the coach for the entire year, not Dennis Allen,
Yeah.
right? And
And had
I,
an
I
off
don't
season
know.
to implement his changes and all those other things.
Exactly.
Like, you know,
It, it's astounding that the fact that he goes to make the one change and then they only have one soft tissue injury the entire year. Like, that's
right.
absurd. Like, that is
By
somebody
adding a
who,
warm up.
I mean, like, come on, that is just low hanging fruit. Like, I look, and Da had a interview with the Colts. He spoke publicly about everything, and all this other stuff. But look, I would put Rizzy in the A category. I think Rizzy has something to him. We've said this though. If you're interim head coach, a special teams guy, like a Bisaccia or something, you're just not going to really probably get that opportunity there. But
Mhm.
if Riz were to go to the Jets, which make no mistake, he comes from that area, so I think it'd
Right.
be a pretty popular hire for them too. But I think he could lead. I think he can do a lot of things. I don't know if it's going to automatically lead to results, but again, I think his teams will be pretty disciplined and accountable to each other, and I think he can win the locker room over easier than some of these other coaches.
Yeah, I think the only thing you got to do with Rizzy is that if you hire Rizzy as a New Orleans Saints, there has to be change everywhere else.
Yes,
Like
you
you
cannot
won't,
keep.
yeah, you won't be able to sell a majority rehash, right? And so Kubiak walking, going to Seattle could be a good thing for New Orleans. They
Yep.
bring in a new offensive coordinator. You're already hiring a new defensive coordinator. You keep your
Mhm.
special teams coordinator, who's also your head coach, and then you probably keep guys like Moof and Galliano and these other guys that
Mhm.
would already be around anyway, and stuff like that. So like I think that's the one caveat to it, is that it would have to accompany a lot of change. And by all intents and purposes, John, what Darren Rizzi told us in his end of year press conference is that if he did get the job, there would be change, because he has other
Yes.
things that he would want to change with an off season. And there was only so much they were able to change because of what they were already doing and him taking over halfway through and yada, yada, yada. So like that would be my one caveat, is he could be an A tier guy with an asterisk in terms of what really makes him A tier is making sure that you follow through with change elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing I tell you is, and we know this, that Derek Carr would be his quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that that
Why
would be
not? Right.
surprising
Like,
to anyone, right?
yeah.
But
Yeah.
like,
In that situation, why not? You know what I mean? Like,
I
sure.
mean, yeah, if you're trying to go push the chips in, you liked what some of the elements he was, and again, if Mickey, if they miss out on a Aaron Glenn, they miss out on a Mike McCarthy. I'm not saying he would just get it by default or anything like that, but I think you just have to take a hard look and see, you know, I think that decision would have to be made in advance, right? Like you wouldn't say we're just going to settle for Rizzy, right? Like you'd be like, no, we're
Right.
just going to go with him, and I don't care what these other teams are doing. But I don't get the sense that that's where it's at right now. But
Mhm.
he gets a lot of praise. I think he can be a fantastic head coach if he ever gets the opportunity. I don't know if it's going to happen for him or not, but a lot of these other guys on the list, I don't know if they'll get that opportunity either. But
Right.
I'd like the concept of a Rizzy over some of these other candidates. I'll tell you that much. So
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I don't think you got to go. I don't think. Here's the reality, right? I don't think that Rizzy is at the top of your list, but I don't think you have to go very far down to get to him. That's the way
yeah,
that I look at it when it comes to Rizzy. Like he is a perfectly respectable hire,
yeah,
especially because of the change that he would be able to bring along with him.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that the biggest thing that scares people is trying to get away from this Sean Payton stuff and all this other
Right.
thing. Like he's a Bill Parcells guy, which to me means he doesn't take any crap. You know what I'm saying? Like Bill
Right.
Parcells was in a league of his own on what he was able to do. And look, I think for a lot of things, there's times where you deserve praise, but there's times where you need to get chewed out. And
Yeah.
Rizzy's not afraid to do that. You know what I mean? Poor Matt
No.
Hayball, but it wasn't just him, but you know what I'm saying? So I just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the fire, the passion, the energy he brings to the job, which is I just don't know if I could say that with any of the other coaching
Yeah.
candidates. But anyways, all right. So moving on, do you have one that you want to go to? I mean, the boards. I love seeing all these minority candidates. I'll just tell you that much. I don't know if
Yeah.
they're
It's
going to all
true.
get head coach jobs, but I do like seeing them on here. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Mm,
Why don't we talk Kellen Moore?
okay, I like Kellen
It's
Moore.
Kellen.
I like that idea.
Yeah. He's a guy that I'm a little bit lower on because he strikes me. You know what it is? His
I
personality.
am too.
You know where I'm going? His personality strikes me as a yes man, and that's the one thing that concerns me about him. Like it's completely unfair of me to say I've never held a conversation with Kellen
Sure.
Moore.
Right. Yes.
I don't know squat about Kellen Moore, but something about him strikes me as a Jason Garrett type, a yes man type, and everything like that. And
Flapper.
maybe it's the maybe it's the maybe it's the Dallas Cowboys connection or something like that. Like maybe that's what it is. I don't think the same thing of McCarthy, to be fair, but for whatever reason, he's not as inspiring in terms of his potential as a Joe Brady is to me. But I don't know if that's fair either. Like, I could be completely wrong, but it's genuinely just like first impression type of a situation for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting because obviously when he became the interim head coach and doing all the things with the Chargers and stuff, a lot of people thought he was going to get the job and he didn't, right? And so they obviously had a different opinion. And again, he is
And
able to be with Dallas for a long time. Yeah, go ahead.
no. I was just gonna say, how much of that was really because they had the shot at Harbaugh, though.
I mean, I think if I had a chance at getting Jim Harbaugh, yeah, I think I'd probably
I'm
take
gonna,
that
I'm
too.
gonna
But
probably do that. Like, sorry,
yeah.
interim, but that's Harbaugh. You know what I mean? Like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like,
No, you're good. But again, Kellen Moore on an Eagles team, I think the biggest thing is how much of it is Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, and all the other talent they got on the team, right? And he also has a number one defense at his disposal too. So I'm not saying Kellen Moore isn't a great coach or anything like that, but I was reading that some people said, and what put into perspective is one day he's going to be a good coach. I don't think he's probably a guy that's ready just yet, but if he goes
yeah,
to
good
Dallas,
call.
maybe. But I just don't know if he's going to have the experience and get the command the room and do all these things. I'm with you. I think he can call plays. I think he can do an offense. But again, the 1 year stint in the Chargers, that's what I kind of get hung up on too, and things like that. But again, you're 1 year with the Eagles, and so I don't know if that bodes well in your favor.
So tough, man. So tough, especially like how good that Eagles team was last year and then the complete fall off that they had, which completely skews the perspective of how good the Eagles have been these past couple of years, the Vic Fangio-ness of it all and everything. Like, there's
Yes.
just so many different things that are part of it. I think Kellen Moore is the one that gives me the biggest kind of heebie jeebie when it comes to the idea of like hiring the head coach. It's only the coach of one half of the football.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm with you. And look, I wouldn't necessarily put him in the C tier with Mike Kafka. I think he's
No.
probably a step above that. I'd put him
Yeah.
probably in the B tier for sure.
I'd go B tier.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Let's see. Another one. I mean, we got some really interesting ones. I'll go with my guy, Anthony Weaver. I don't
Yeah.
know that he's gonna get a head coaching job this year. He's been with the Dolphins, a guy with from the Jim or John Harbaugh tree, excuse me,
Hmm.
just a player's coach. He played in the league. Again, I
Yep.
know people are like, "Ooh, the Dolphins defense," but again, you pull back the layers, you look at some of the things. He did some really good things with the Dolphins defense that weren't always surface level. And look, again, I think if you're looking at turmoil, I think it has more to do with the head coach, not the defensive coordinator there, right? Like I think that's
Yeah.
that's part of the things there and situation with Tua, all this stuff. But look, I said it early on. We said it in the program, and I've written about it that this would be my guy, my choice, because this is the unfamiliar hire for me. Is that nobody really has any ties to him that I know of offhand. I think he comes from a different tree, a different philosophy, all these things. I think if they would go in a new direction, this would probably be a guy that I'd look at. And I'm not going to put him in the S tier. I don't know if I'd even put him in the A tier. I think B is probably right because again, he's got kind of the unknown stuff here. But again, I like the concept of Anthony Weaver coming in and coaching this team. I just do.
I do too. I do too. I'm actually with you on that. I think that he's a B tier guy for me, but man, I think he's going to be an excellent head coach at a certain point. I don't know if he's ready right now, but like if
Yeah.
he ends up being in a situation to where, in a couple years, the Saints job reopens for whatever reason and he's available, I think he's going to make a lot more sense at that point than he will make at this point and everything.
Yeah.
I think I truly think that to be true. I think he's a remarkably talented dude. He's somebody that players love playing for. He and he's not afraid to be the person that changes the status quo. When players were leaving and they were doing their exit interviews after the season before he became the defensive coordinator, which the year before, remember that was Vic Fangio, who we were just talking about
Hmm.
with the Philadelphia Eagles. The complaints around Vic Fangio came down to things that Weaver immediately adjusted when he became the defensive coordinator. He took all of that in and then he made changes. And I think that's an important establishment. If you think the New Orleans Saints roster doesn't believe that there needs to be change, then go read Cam Jordan's, go read that interview with Cam Jordan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the players will tell you what needs to be changed and what was different, what didn't work, all these other things. And Weaver has already shown that he can accept that feedback and then make something different and get players excited about it. I think he's somebody that generates buy-in. He has the attitude of a leader, like an actual leader, a rah-rah guy, a motivator, all those other things. Former player with some tough teams, the Houston Texans, the Baltimore Ravens. He was not a team on some slouch of defenses.
Yep.
He was a team on, I mean, he was a player on a teams that demanded a lot of him. I think he would demand the same of his players. I think that's really important. I don't know if he's there yet. But I think he's close. And I think he's going to be a really good coach when he gets the opportunity. The thing I'm most curious about, John, is he going to be a defensive play caller or is he going to be a CEO type? Because I think he could check the boxes either.
Yeah, I agree. And here's just my playing it out. If he really wants to make a name for himself, come be the Saints defensive coordinator and then turn that bad unit to like top 10 again. And I think he's got a job, right? Like,
Head
I'm
coach in
not
waiting,
saying
right?
he will. I'm not saying, but I just feel like that could be another play. Is that I'm not saying that they just did a interview with him just because of the head coach. Maybe they wanted to get a little bit more information of him, and maybe he could be their defensive coordinator. I don't
Good
know. I'm
call.
not
It's a
saying
good
he
call.
wouldn't be, but I think that if I'm him and I don't get a shot this carousel, maybe I go to a situation where I feel like I can improve this team defensively, and then now I'm in line to say, okay, I'm definitely going to be a head coach. You know what I mean? But I really
Yep.
like Anthony Weaver. I think as a person, if you ever go check him out and stuff, like this is a guy that could get me jazzed up too, right? Like
No, for sure.
I just feel it. So, but I just don't think a
Joe
time
Brady,
might be yet.
Joe Brady knows that defense, right? He plays against that defense twice a year. He's seen it and everything like that. If he becomes a head coach, imagine calling up Anthony Weaver and saying, "Hey, buddy, you want out of the AFC? Come over to the
Yeah,
NFC, greener
yeah.
pastures." Like, yeah, I can see something like that.
You never know. You never know. I'll go to a different one. I'll go to oddball one because again, I think this is one that's come out just kind of out of the not out of the blue, but just somebody who Pete Carroll is where I'm going, right? Like Pete
Yes,
Carroll
an
is a
interesting
guy.
one. This is
I think
our
he's
ad. This is not
fabulous.
us reporting
Yeah.
interest in
Yes.
Pete Carroll. This is like an addition for us, right?
Yes. Yeah. And the thing is, a lot of these candidates, not everybody's linked to him, but I'm just saying of the guys that are kind of available,
Yeah.
guys that we've talked about, wrote about, all this other stuff. Pete Carroll's a guy that I think is a sneaky play. I think he could come in. He could what I'd say is he can at least get the hands back on the ship to stop it from sinking and at least try to turn the tide a little bit, right? Like he
Yeah.
knows how to build a program. He can run a defense if he needs to. He can lead a team. He's got emotion. He's got fire. He's got passion. He's got a lot of things. And I think him being off a year gives him a chance to reset. I like Pete Carroll. I would put him in a not the S tier for sure. We only got the one guy in the S tier, but I'd put him up
Mhm.
there with Mike McCarthy because again, he's got the experience. I know he's older, but I think Pete Carroll's just got a respect to him that players can get behind, and he's just got a way of doing things that I just love.
Yeah, it would be hard to separate him and McCarthy, right? Like you kind of have to
Mhm.
put him where McCarthy is, all the same stuff, right? Super Bowl winning head coach, playoff guy, spent most of his time excelling with one team and then would get an
Yeah.
opportunity to go to another team. He'd kind of be the Mike McCarthy when he went to the Dallas Cowboys of this environment, right?
Hmm.
My one thing on him, or my two things on him, is obviously like his age, but you're probably not hiring Pete Carroll to be your head coach for the next 10 years. You're hiring Pete Carroll to be your head coach for the next 3 or 4, rebuild your program, rebuild your culture, rebuild your team, and then sell his product at a later time when he's ready to call it quits. I don't think that's a terrible situation. I don't think that's a bad setup. Get right with the salary cap, all this other stuff. He has also been very vocal about the impatience on quarterbacks in the NFL, which could be good for a young Spencer Rattler, for
Hmm.
instance. Could be good for Derek Carr too, right? Like he would be able to come in and say, you know what? No, I'm okay with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever that might be. That's a plus to some. That's a negative for others. Don't care one way or another myself. But like that's probably what you're looking at with this guy. And so you get patience from the organization, you get patience from the head coach spot, and you get to rebuild your culture and rebuild your defense. The one thing is I would need I would be more interested in Pete Carroll as the CEO and
Sure.
then modern day NFL defensive coordinator, modern day NFL offensive coordinator. That would be my one thing. I
I
don't
agree.
want to see them
Totally.
try to bring back a cover 3 Legion of Boom defense. It doesn't work in today's NFL. People should stop trying it. Like that
Yeah.
would be my one thing. You know what I mean? But as long as he's willing to change that up, then great.
Yeah, I think the impact Pete Carroll could have is Bill Parcells with the Cowboys. That's the type of vision I
Oh,
see
that's
for
nice.
him.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
think so,
Yep.
because obviously Bill Parcells made his bread and butter with the Giants, and then he did stuff with the Jets. But he wasn't horrible with the Cowboys. I mean, he was able to really come in and fix a franchise that sucked. I mean, like they
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
bottom of the barrel, and so I think that's kind of what Pete Carroll would be to me is somebody who can at least get the franchise going back in the right direction, maybe be a little bit more competitive than normal, and they may shock some people. But I think that's where
Yeah.
I put him at for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. He's not
All
your
right,
long-term corrective
no,
surgery, but he's more than a
no.
band-aid.
Yeah, and let's stick with veterans. Let's just go
Yep.
here because I think we both can probably agree. But let's talk about John Gruden. I think John Gruden is a strong coach, but I think the stuff that follows him, and we've said nobody's gone on the bandwagon yet. Nobody's jumped to interview him yet, which might be a sign that maybe he's not going to be coming back into the NFL. But
Mhm.
I got to rank him lower, and it's not because of his you know, NFL tenure and what he's done on the NFL teams and all that. He obviously Derek Carr, he's familiar with it. He's a guy that could come in and plug and play. But the stuff outside of the football realm, which is in the football realm, but all the noise surrounding John Gruden, that can derail a team, especially a team that you're trying to preach culture, culture, culture with. I guess I
Mhm.
gotta make him lower because of that fact.
Yeah, he's a C tier for me. He's whatever the lowest tier is for me. I just think that like the baggage isn't worth it, and I don't think that the team is in a position to manage it. You know what I mean?
Mm,
I don't think that the
yeah.
Saints, who are an organization that needs a turnaround, that needs to, it's fighting to stay, I don't want to say fighting to stay relevant because I don't think that's entirely true. I think they're a relevant franchise, and I don't think that anything's really going to jeopardize that at this point. But I think that they're a team that's not really in a place to say, yeah, we can handle the baggage of your emails. You know what I mean?
No.
Or we can handle the baggage of what's still following you and effectively the stink that's still a part of what led to your resignation in Las Vegas. And I'm going to be honest, he still hasn't impressed me as a guy that could turn around and win anything. Like, I got it. He won with Tony Dungy's, team and
Hmm.
everything back with the Bucks and stuff. But like, man, like that was not, he has not followed up on that success anywhere. It, I don't get it. I
Yeah. I
don't
mean, he
get
had
it.
some times with the Raiders, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
he
just
found some success there as a team, but he was not a they were not a threat. They were not a threat to win. They were not a perennial playoff team. They were not a championship contender. They were never any of those things under him. And so I don't get it. He's a fun personality on his, barstool stuff and everything like that. And people love him. And, he's got connections all over the roster and all over the front offices with that. I understand. But man, I don't get the appeal in today's NFL. It just doesn't make sense
mm,
to me. So he's a C for me.
yeah. And here's the other thing, and I wasn't intentionally trying to go here. The things about the prospects of Aaron Glenn and Darren Rizzi, what I'll say about them is I could see them shoulder to shoulder with everybody in the community. I don't ever got the sense that Dennis Allen was a guy that did that, right? But I'd say Rizzi could go
Solid
in
point.
and do that. I think Aaron Glenn could do that in the community. Again, DA was at Pelicans games. That's really all I remember, right? And not
Yep.
saying that Sean was doing all this stuff too, but like I just think going a long way, being able to support the city, and that's somebody the city can get behind too. I think that's not
Yeah.
what you get with a John Gruden. I just don't think you do that.
Yeah, and look, Sean was doing commercials where he's ordering roasted falcon and
That
he's
is
in,
true.
he's in Whole Foods telling people worry about your meat. You know what I mean? Like there's like he was still something. He was on the sideline doing the skull clap and he was
Yeah,
making choke
yeah,
gestures at like
yep.
that's the way that he connected with the organization and the. But you know what else he did? You know what else he did? They won a Super Bowl under him, and he drove his convertible down the French Quarter, holding Lombardi up for the people of the city to put their hands on it.
Hmm.
That's still love. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I think that's such an important piece too. It's one of the reasons why I love Rizzy as a part of this equation. Whew, I'm getting dizzy. I'm so worked up.
Mm,
I'm getting the vapors, John. But like that's the connection that I think you have to have with this city. It's why I care as a part of the evaluation for who the New Orleans Saints next head coach is, it's why I care about, does it inspire the city? Does it inspire the fan base? Because it's a unique situation here.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, another thing is, I'm just looking at both of those candidates, like Aaron Glenn and stuff, and Darren Rizzi. They're not going to apologize for running up the score on the Falcons. They
Great
just
point.
aren't.
Players hated that.
You don't go against your players. Like, you could sit here and be like, behind closed doors, you could say an apology, like, or not apology, but you could just kind of play it, downplay it or something like that. But all you had to say is, we were just trying to go win the football game. We're trying to do something. Like, don't apologize. And Aaron Glenn ain't going to apologize for putting, bending over knee and spanking a little bit. Neither is Darren Rizzi. I think there is something to that. You need some edge. You need to be a little butthole in your personality too, because
you
this
gotta
is
be
the
petty.
NFL. Yeah,
You gotta be petty. You gotta be petty in this city, man. You don't like it, stop it. Like that kind of attitude.
Yeah, exactly. So that's another thing that I think is, as a candidate, I want to see too. I don't want to see somebody who's going to come in here polished, professional, well-spoken, has to be well-spoken, everything. No, show your emotions, right? Like, that's
don't
my
button
thing
up.
too. Yeah, exactly. All right, so we go from the experienced side of the spectrum to the inexperienced. Let's talk about Jesse Minter. Chargers defensive coordinator, came over at Jim Harbaugh. Now, this is your guy. I really love the idea of him. I just don't think we're ready to see him yet as a coach.
I think he's in the exact same conversation as Anthony Weaver, right? Like, he's a year away from being a year away kind of guy. The big thing for him is you're trying to separate where the success is, right? Kind of the same thing that we talked about with Kellen Moore. Try to figure out where the success is. Is it Harbaugh's success? His dad, Jesse Minter's dad, was a coach and all these other things too. So he has that in his blood. But he was with Harbaugh in Michigan, found success with Harbaugh, with the Chargers, found success. So what does he look like away from it? He's going to be one of those guys, kind of like similar to an Eric Bieniemy, to where he needs to go away from the coach and be a coordinator again, but somewhere else and stuff, and then figure out, what he can do, and then prove what he can do in those situations away from the guy that he's kind of been under the wing of. And so I think he needs more time, but boy, I think he's going to be a good coach in the NFL once he gets there.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I again, you look at the Chargers did and what they have been. And now again, Texans, that offense, I was really surprised that the Chargers offense went to the wayside, like how bad it did. But credit to Houston. Again, we love us some D'Amico Ryans here, but man, what a performance they did against the Chargers to move on. And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're going to upset Kansas City. I think that's a tough one, but of the teams, the Philly's the other team that I think can get upset too. But I would not sleep on Houston if they put up that type of defensive effort against the Chiefs. I'm just saying.
The formula to beat Patrick Mahomes, right? You got to get him off kilter. You got to put pressure on him. And that's something that Houston does well. It doesn't mean that they will win, but man, that's what you got to do if you want to have a chance. And I think that they can do that. They can get their run game going if they can keep Joe Mixon moving, stuff like that. Like, I think all that's there, but I think a lot of it comes down to that defense. And that's what you saw give the Chargers so much trouble and give Justin Herbert so much trouble. But you also saw the defense kind of become shaky because of the inability to produce on offense, right? And so that's where I think the Minter-ness of it all is, like, it goes the way of others. And so I want to see what he's able to do, kind of removed from that situation, what he can do on his own.
Definitely. So you're thinking,
don't think he's ready yet, but I like him. I think he's a B
probably.
Guy.
I wouldn't put him B for sure. B tier. All right. Well, we got 3 candidates left. Let's see. You want Vance Joseph or Brian Flores? Who do we want to talk about?
Let's go Vance Joseph first, because where we put Vance Joseph, I think will give me the barometer for where I would argue to put Brian Flores.
Okay, I got you. So Vance Joseph, the Denver defense. I mean, Denver's turnaround. The fact that he went back there. I mean, he was a coach there, obviously, and then he goes back to work. You don't see that really happen, to go back to the place that like fired you, whatever.
Yeah, right.
But look, I think what they were able to do against Buffalo early on was really something. Buffalo fans were uneasy, right? Like, if the offense could have, like, there's the Saints adage, if the offense that Sean Payton's offense could have done a little bit more against the Bills. I think the defense was doing a fine job against Josh Allen and James Cook. All the weapons that they had, they were doing well, and a lot of it had to do with Vance Joseph. So
Hmm.
I think he can be a really good a coach again here. He's a Kubiak guy. I think that if I wrote this, I said this, that he was another one of my picks, Weaver or Vance Joseph, because if the Saints wanted to stick with continuity, I wasn't saying this was the definite play, but if they brought Vance Joseph in, maybe he keeps Clint Kubiak. Maybe they run back with some of those elements because they like the Kubiak system and what it brings to the table. But Vance Joseph, what's the gauge on him?
Well, one other thing that I'll mention too is the connectivity to the city, right? He's a Marrero
Yep.
guy and
Yep.
everything from the city of Marrero. I'm a back of Ames
Super
boy
important.
myself and
Super
everything, you know
important
what I
point.
mean? So like I understand that even though it's West Bank, it's not the city and everything like that, but it's still like Marrero's different. I think Brian Bienemy's from Marrero too. Like there's a few of us that are from Marrero that are a
Moe's
problem. And
Pizza.
so
Moe's Pizza. Thank me later. I
yeah,
will
right there you go.
mention Moe's Pizza on here for sure
I
because
love
their
that.
pizza is outstanding, and you can only get it on the end of West Bank. You know what I'm saying? In
Yeah,
Marrero.
right.
So,
I
yep.
love that. And so like I grew, I spent a large part of my life on, growing up in the back of Ames and everything like that. And so like I got a lot of respect for people that are coming out from that area. So I think that's the other thing in terms of the connectivity to the city. Uh, the only thing I don't know is that I don't know if I can put him in the same category or the same ranking tier as McCarthy
No.
and Carroll,
Mm-mm.
because if
I
they're
wouldn't.
A tier having won Super Bowls, then I can't put
Mm-mm.
Vance
Mm-mm.
Joseph in that area.
Yeah.
Not that I think Vance Joseph's a failure or that Vance Joseph's a
No.
bad option. I just can't, like, if that's the class of the A tier, I can't put Vance Joseph as one of the other former head coaches in that same category. But
No, I
do I
agree.
think that he would be a solid option? Yes. I'd put him at the top of the B tier for
Yeah.
certain. And so that would be my one thing, is just looking at like what this tier list is derived of. I couldn't put him in A, but I'd put him as a very, very solid B.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just put him up kind of close to the top of the B tier right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And so that makes sense. And so I probably would shift Carroll up there and then Brady and
Hmm.
Rizzy. I think that probably looks about right. That's
Yeah.
an interesting debate, Carroll over Mike McCarthy. But
Yeah.
anyways, I digress. But no, I'm with you. I think with Vance Joseph, it would be the leader of that tier, in my opinion. I
Hmm.
think he can do a lot of good things. I just, like you said, he doesn't have the creds like these other coaches, former coaches did. I think he can
Right.
come in and do a good job on a program. I could also see it not working out so well, but I think it's not going to be from a lack of what he brings to the table in terms of
100%.
intelligence,
Yep.
coaching, running a
100%.
program. Like he's a guy that I think can do all of those things, but no guarantee of success. But I do like the concept of Vance Joseph. I think if he gets a
Hmm.
shot somewhere, which maybe he will, maybe he won't. I mean, there's some other coaching spots that could come open, that we just don't know about. But I do like Vance Joseph.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you on that. I think he's an incredibly talented guy, proven leader as
Hmm.
well. And somebody that would demand the most out of his team, that would build a culture, all those things. Just doesn't have the resume
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
other guys have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which I think probably if where you're probably going, and I'm not going to speak for you, but if
Yeah.
Vance Joseph at the top of the B tier and based on the other candidates, I probably put Brian Flores right behind him above
Exactly right. Yep.
like Kellen Moore and Anthony Weaver. That's probably where I would go with Brian Flores, just because again, I don't think the NFL lawsuit stuff is really going to be a big deal when it's all said and done.
No.
Like it is a big deal. Make no mistake about it. Like
Right. Right.
this
Right.
whole minority coaches, all this other stuff that's going on, the NFL has a problem. Like this Rooney Rule stuff is
Yeah.
just asinine. I will just go out and again, has nothing to do with the color of my skin, the color of Ross's skin, but everybody knows. We said it early in the top of the show. The New England thing. Come
Oh
on,
my
guys.
gosh.
They weren't serious about Byron Leftwich as a coach or the other guy. Like that was just
Yeah.
let's satisfy the Rooney Rule. And like I said, we
Yeah.
said,
And
good
no.
on Aaron Glenn for not entertaining that crap.
Yeah. Yeah. And no disrespect to Byron Leftwich or Pep Hamilton. We're just saying
Yeah,
they deserve
absolutely.
better. They deserve
Uh,
better. And even if you
uh,
were bringing them in as guys that you're interviewing to say, like, actually, we're more interested in you as offensive coordinators, then don't use them to satisfy your head coach Rooney Rule.
yeah,
Right. Like
yeah,
that's the part that's just kind of gross. And so, yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot that the NFL needs to fix on this situation.
Yeah, and again, Byron Leftwich, maybe he's an offensive coordinator somewhere. Maybe he could be
Yeah.
offensive coordinator for the Saints if he's trying to get back in the game. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
I'm not saying that's the play, but again, could you imagine? Like, I'm living in fantasy land, but if Aaron Glenn was the coach, then you had Anthony Weaver as your defensive coordinator, then Byron Leftwich as your offense coordinator, like that would be historic, right? Like, I don't think there's ever been, unless you go to like the ranks at HBCU, but in an NFL level, like a minority trifecta, right?
Yeah.
Like that
The
would be
closest,
something
I
to
think
me.
one of the closest that we've seen to that was actually the Lions, funny enough. Like, didn't they have,
Yeah.
because they had like Brian
Jim
Johnson, they
Caldwell.
had,
No, not I'm
yeah,
sorry. No, back those days, but yeah.
it would have been the early Campbell days where they had like all
Yeah.
three of their coordinators were minority coaches or something like that. I can't remember
Mhm.
exactly what it was, but like
Yeah.
that was like one of the most diverse coaching staffs that we had ever seen and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could be a lot of fun. And again, like that kind of thing, like you're not just hiring them because of the color of their skin, you're hiring them because they're
Oh,
talented guys and
and
everything.
they deserve a shot.
And they deserve the opportunity. And to do that in a city that it represents, awesome. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
one of the other things that I think is important.
I agree. I agree. All right. I'm kind of glad this shaped up the way it did because
Yeah,
Cliff Kingsbury is a really interesting one, right? Like
super.
I'm trying to get the best gauge on Cliff Kingsbury because again, what he did in Arizona, again, the mixed bag, if you will, but what he's doing with Washington, and then for him to have the wherewithal to say, okay, I'm putting all these interviews on hold because I'm more focused on the lines. I think that says a lot about
Love
his
that.
character.
Love
I
that
think that was
decision.
an outstanding move on his part, and because he's right. Like I would probably be inclined to say it's great that you want me, but I am worried about winning this football game. And I think that speaks volumes more than a virtual interview with him. But what's your gauge? What's your take on Cliff Kingsbury? Because I think he's an interesting guy for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And again, I think he's one of those guys to where like people are going to say, well, he had this quarterback and that quarterback and this quarterback and that quarterback. Fine.
Okay.
Get him
Yeah.
one of those quarterbacks. Like that's the job of the NFL team. So I don't think that that's really something to pull away from him. But look at what he's done with the Washington Commanders, who came into the season with the worst offensive line in football. Like
Yeah.
by every person's opinion, by every expert's opinion. My good friend Matt Williamson, who's a former NFL scout, used to be with the Cleveland Browns. He and covers the Steelers now. He and I did a show together, and we ranked all of the NFL's offensive lines. And one of the very first ones that we talked about was the Washington Commanders because they were so bad. And look at what
Yeah.
he's been able to do with that offense. It's been awesome and everything.
Yeah.
And so maybe they were a little bit talented than we thought that they were, but the scheme helps, man. The scheme helps big time. And when you have a quarterback that can erase stuff like Jaden Daniels does, you got to put him in the situation to be able to erase those things. And I think Cliff Kingsbury does that. And so I think the biggest thing that Cliff Kingsbury does is that he offers change. He offers a change at quarterback. He offers a change at offensive system, and the defense that's got to be able to keep up with that and everything. I think is a really important piece too. Like the Commanders are like right in the middle of the NFL in time of possession because of how quick they operate. Right.
Yeah.
So your defense has got to be ready to operate quick too and stuff. And so they flipped that entire defense. It was one returning starter on the Washington Commanders defense from 2023 to 2024. The job that
Yeah.
they've done with that defense is insane. And so I
Yes.
think that like that's the thing that you have to be able to provide alongside them in order to make them successful. But man, I love the character of, hey, I'm not taking these interviews. I love the way that you said it. That to me was his interview. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let you know, like, it's that whole phrase, like the best time to get a job is when you already got a job. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Exactly.
And stuff. And he's saying, I got stuff to do. All right, leave me alone. Like,
Right.
I appreciate it. Thanks. But I'm going to go do this. I think that speaks very loudly. I think he's probably, I don't know how much I can separate him and Joe Brady. I don't know how far I can separate him and Kellen Moore. So my immediate inclination is that he's a B tier guy, but a high B tier guy, kind of in between Flores and Moore is kind of where I picture him at the moment. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that like I would be hard pressed to put him above Vance Joseph, to put him above Brian Flores. And so
Mhm.
that's really what that's about. So based on these rankings, that's where I think he lives. But I cannot stop raving about the decision that he made, but I don't think that one decision makes him, a guy that's ready to be a head coach again.
Yeah, and I think the biggest criticisms, it's kind of like the Clint Kubiak thing, is his second half offense has not played particularly well. Now, in clutch moments and different things, they have come up to the table, but I think where the difference is, he actually can do the execution, because it's like what Clint Kubiak would be if he was like successful, is what Cliff
Yeah,
Kingsbury is. And I'm throwing that out very loosely because both are extremely talented, but Cliff Kingsbury is he was a head coach. He's done this a lot longer, all this other stuff. But
has the right quarterback, all this stuff. Like, yeah, man,
exactly.
like
Like, I mean, there's
it all
so many
matters.
factors. I mean, shoot, you have a Terry McLaurin, you have a ground game, you have Austin Eckler, you have Brian Robinson Jr., you have Jaden Daniels, that guy, and you have even like Zacchaeus. You know what I'm saying? Like, you've got
Right.
great talent to support, and that offensive line ain't too bad, but their turnaround has just been insane. And so, look,
Just
I
wild.
I like Cliff Kingsbury. I think he's going to get another shot. I don't know if it's going to be this coaching cycle. It's
Mhm.
going to be really fascinating. I think he's ascending. I just don't know if that's what the New Orleans Saints need right now at this
Yeah.
present moment. And so I think he can be a good, successful head coach. I love his attitude. I just don't know if that's where it gets him right now. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think really, honestly, John, like the thing that I love about this is like I always believe that these tier lists should be a bell curve. There should be fewer S tier than anything else. There should be fewer last tier than anything else. And then you kind of fill in the middle with these guys. So this feels right in terms of the way that we rank these. What I will add as one quick caveat is the only other S tier candidate that I would like conceptually put up at the top would be Ben Johnson. But
Yep.
obviously, like the
Saints
interest
aren't
is
getting
clearly not there, right? And so I just
Yes.
want to mention that, like, if you wanted to think about, like, oh, who else would be S tier if none of these other guys are? Ben Johnson would be the caliber, and I think that's fair to kind of show
I
where
would
the
agree.
delineating line would be.
Completely agree. Yes, I agree. And Ben Johnson's gonna, again, if the situation's not there, I think Ben Johnson is right to be picky in a lot of aspects. But
100%.
yeah, I'm with you though. I think that would be another S tier ranking for me for sure. I mean, that's just look what he's done with the offense. Is innovative, the way he's able to do things, the way he gets people involved, the creativity. Like, he's everything you'd want in a modern style offense, right? Like, I
Yeah,
guess that's the thing. And the Saints
he's
tried to
got to
go
take a
to a
job
modern.
though.
So yeah, he's got to. I
He's
think
got to
so
take a
too.
job. You can't keep doing this. You can't
Yeah.
keep getting away with this, Ben Johnson. Like eventually, like I know I just said the best time to get a job is when you got a job, but goodness gracious, man. Like you can't
Yeah.
do this a third year in a row of like, nah, no, I'm gonna just go back to the Lions. Like the
Yeah.
well's gonna run dry, my dude. Like you
Mhm.
gotta be careful with this. Everything.
Mhm.
So he's gotta take a job. He's gotta do
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I'm with you. The only
it.
thing I'd ask is on the A tier, are you satisfied with Brady over Rizzy, or do you think Rizzy should be over
That's
Brady?
the one. I was wondering if maybe if Rizzy should be over Brady.
I
But
would
like
I would say so.
I think what we're doing in that case is we're saying, okay, we're adding in a little bit of like the Saints preference to it, like what we'd imagine the
Sure.
Saints
Put our
preference
Saints
to
in.
be
Mhm.
is probably what it is. And so I think that's maybe what lifts Rizzy over. Um, but man, like I I don't think that Joe Brady's a bad option at all.
Mhm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I really, really don't. But I think, a little bit of experience on the sideline now for Rizzy, I think makes a difference for him. He was a real candidate back in 2022. Like I, I think I think it's fair to put Rizzy above Brady.
Yeah, I would agree too. And I think there's other candidates that are not on the this list. I mean, we mentioned potentially Matt Nagy, but I would say more likely would be Steve Spagnuolo. But that would
Spagnola,
be a
I think,
really interesting one. But
yeah.
I don't know
Todd
what he's gonna do.
Right. Todd Munkin should be a
Yep.
name.
Mhm.
Chris Horton should be a name,
Yep.
another special teams guy,
Yep.
fantastic special teams coordinator with the
So
Baltimore
many
Ravens.
different ones. Yes.
Like there's still a lot of those names out there to where it's like, yeah, okay, that person would make sense, and that person would make sense, and that person would make sense. Like
Mhm.
we added some names in here, but there's more that we could probably have added,
Absolutely.
but we'll
Absolutely.
see.
But this
We'll
is
see
the
how many
list,
they actually
and
bring
this
in.
is the absolute correct list. I don't expect anybody to disagree with this rankings and our
we
assessment
should
because,
Yeah, we should run through it real quick for the audio side that doesn't have the visual.
Yeah,
and
right.
everything.
Okay, that's a good call. So in our S tier ranking, only one coach. That's Aaron Glenn. That's our top prospect. In our A tier, we have Mike McCarthy. This is in order, so everybody knows. So Mike
Mhm.
McCarthy, Pete Carroll, Darren Rizzi, and Joe Brady. In our B tier, Vance Joseph, Brian Flores, Cliff Kingsbury, Kellen Moore, Anthony Weaver, and then Jesse Minter. And in our C tier, Mike Kafka above John Gruden, which I think that's fair, probably.
That's the way I would do it, baby.
Yeah,
That's the way I
yeah,
would do it.
yeah. So, and look, I don't want to sit here and harp on John Gruden or bash him because I've never met the guy. I just know that the look of what happened, that's a hard thing to come back from. You know what
Very.
I'm saying? Like and again, in a city like New Orleans, I don't know how you sell that. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
just don't see how you sell that. And so yeah, that's interesting. So that's our tier stuff, and hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. We definitely went a little longer than I thought it was going to take, but it was good discussion about it, and
Yeah, it's
so
fun. It was a
definitely,
good little welcome back to the pod, right? Like
that's right,
a little
that's
bit,
right,
a little bit extra, a little bit of
that's right,
lanyap in there,
that's
like
it,
well,
that's it.
lanyap for you.
Yeah, Lanyap, Lanyap. I'm a Lafayette guy, so Lanyap is what I grew up with. So used to be a restaurant called Lanyaps, and so
Oh yeah,
that was another one. Lanyap. It was a seafood style restaurant in
of
Lafayette.
course it
I don't
was.
know if
Of
anybody's
course
old
it
enough to remember that. Well, Ross, as we wind down and wrap up, of course, what's coming up on Locked On Sports and what is coming up on LouisianaSports.net? Because there's a lot of things coming, obviously.
Oh my gosh, dude, it's been so much and it's awesome. We got LSU baseball season on the way and everything. The LSU women's basketball team is hooping like crazy. Shocker, surprise, surprise, everything. So,
Yep.
like Louisiana Sports.net, of course, we don't just cover the States, we cover LSU. We're adding
Mhm.
Pelicans coverage, we're growing those coverages and things like that too. So, just trying to give you the best of the best in terms of what we can get there. And it's just been awesome. I wrote a piece that I'm really proud of the other day around the Saints needing to add to that wide receiver room, not to replace Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed, but to better complement Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. That piece has
Totally
been
agree.
well received. So I really, really loved writing that. That was a lot of fun digging into like some of the free agency folks and the draft folks and stuff like that. So please go and check that out. And then over at Locked On Saints, I'm shifting to 7 days a week now that we're into the off season and everything because I can't get enough. We have some other things that are on the way that I'm really, really excited about, and I'm excited to announce soon. And so, just like there's a ton, man. It's been so
Yeah.
much fun. What you got over at
Awesome.
Saints News Network,
Yeah, look, I'm doing my
and the
state of the
extra
off
work here on
season.
the channel, by the way.
Yeah,
You've been doing some
right.
extra work here on this channel.
Yeah, a little bit here. And so right now looking at the state of the off season on SI. So I've looked at two positions and then taken some different creative angles because that's kind of what the off season is it's
Mm-hmm.
about reviewing, assessing, but state of the Saints when it comes to the running backs, the quarterbacks, that's the only two positions. Wide receivers up next. And I absolutely 100% agree with you. They have got to get a playmaker. Igbuka from Ohio State.
Oh,
I would love him in the first round. I'm just going to tell you that right
uh,
now.
love
Ohio
that.
State receivers, but again, they got way too many other needs to do that. I just, you know, it'll be interesting. But gosh, I just went blank. The Penn State guy, the edge
Oh,
rusher,
Tyler Warren. Oh, Amir,
uh,
Abdul Carter.
Abdul
Man,
Carter. Yes, Abdul
man.
Carter. I know I saw something today like, yeah, you could fall to 9. I'm like, I don't think
Oh,
so.
okay,
If he's
sure.
falling to 9, then I'm going sprint at the podium to go turn that
Yeah,
one in. I don't even need the 15 minutes. I'm like, here.
for real.
But
Goodness.
yeah,
Him in the first round, Jalen Royals, wide receiver out of Utah State in the second round. And then or if Alec Ayumanor were to fall in the second round, that would be dope. Oh man, yeah.
yeah,
I'm ready for draft season. I'm ready.
yeah. I agree. I like the Walter Nolan in the second round for me.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
going to re-solidify those trenches. That's kind of what
Yeah,
I
man.
did. But anyways, but that'll be fun. We're gonna have the draft talk too soon. But
Yep.
man,
We'll
we're
be
in
at
a
the Senior
coaching
Bowl.
search. Senior Bowl's coming up, and combine right after that. And
Goodness.
I remember was it 2 years ago? The trade for Sean Payton while we were at Senior Bowl practice. Like that was
Yep.
nuts. I remember doing that. So,
Yep.
but
That was crazy.
yeah. Anyways, but Ross, solid stuff as always, man. Really appreciate you. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe button, and thank you guys so much for the support. We got plenty more that's going to be cooking up here, and we invite you to come back when we get it. We'll keep you posted and all that fun stuff. But on behalf of Mr. Ross Jackson, John Hendricks signing out for Second and Saints. Please stay warm. Please take care of your pets. Please cover your pipes. Please cover your shrubberies, all that good stuff. But definitely bring in your pets. That's another thing too. But y'all stay warm as possible for this whatever wintry mix that we're coming up with. That'll do it for us today, guys. Thanks so much. Appreciate y'all.
Love you.